Hello and welcome to our January 2026 What's Bugging You First Friday session. We're excited to have you here today to kick off our new season, and I'm looking forward to our presentation today by my co-host, Dr. Amara Dunn-Silver. Amara is the biocontrol specialist at Cornell IPM, and today she's going to be talking about stratifying seed of native perennial wildflowers. Take it away, Amara.
Thanks, Matt. I think this is a fun topic for January because I don't know about you, but my mailbox has started filling up with seed catalogs, and January is around the time in winter when I start getting very itchy to be planting things. But it's really too early to be starting vegetable or annual flower seeds. So today we're going to be talking about starting native perennial wildflower seeds inside. I like to start my talks by letting folks know that I consider myself to be someone who is experting in this topic and really all topics I speak about. So I spend a lot of time learning and thinking about the topic and thinking about how to communicate it with other folks, but I don't know everything there is to know, and I always learn something new when I give these talks. Today we'll be talking about what is seed stratification and why it's important. We'll talk about which seeds need to be stratified, and then we'll talk about how to stratify seeds. So, what is seed stratification? Seed stratification just means breaking the seed's dormancy. I think about it as waking the seeds up before germination can happen. Just like a person needs to be woken up before they can get dressed and get out of the house, the seeds sometimes need to be woken up before they're ready to germinate. Stratification is different from scarification. Scarification, you can think about scarring something, is to physically break a hard seed coat, whether that's by scratching the surface of the seed coat or using heat or acid. Sometimes stratification is needed in order for a seed to germinate. In some plant species, the seeds just won't germinate no matter what kind of great potting mix you have, or perfect heat mats, or great plant lighting. The seeds won't germinate unless you have broken their dormancy with stratification or cracked their seed coats with scarification, or sometimes both. Stratification and scarification are processes that happen naturally outside. So when we're growing these seeds inside, we may need to do this for the seeds. So which seeds need to be stratified? Many native perennial wildflower plants, their seeds require stratification before they will germinate. If you're interested in growing perennial wildflowers to feed beneficial insects, like pollinators or natural enemies, and you want to grow them from seed and start the seeds inside over the winter, stratification can help you get better germination. If you think about these perennial wildflowers and how their seed is being produced in the fall, it makes sense that it's advantageous for the plant if germination is delayed until the springtime. And if you think about what sorts of conditions the seeds will experience over the winter outside, freezing and thawing and moisture, that'll give you some clues as to some of the conditions that seeds might need if you're going to stratify them inside. How do you know specifically which species need to be stratified? Essentially, you have to find a reputable source. That might be the company that is selling the wildflower seed, or it might be a local extension organization or office. And I'll include some links in the video description to more information about finding stratification instructions for specific plant species. So how do you stratify your seeds? There's kind of two general common methods, heat and cold, and both involve moisture. So some seeds need to be exposed to some hot water, whether that's pouring the boiling water over the seeds and letting the seeds soak for a period of time before planting them, or holding the seeds in boiling water, as I'm doing in this picture here, for some period of time, and then planting the seeds in potting mix. Exposing the seeds to cold temperatures and moisture for a period of time is another really common form of stratification, probably the most common that I've seen. The time period for which those seeds need to experience that cold and moist environment varies from species to species, but somewhere between 30 and 60 days is pretty common, which is one of the reasons we're talking about seed stratification in January. So if you think about if you were to start stratifying your seeds in the middle of January, They might be done with stratification in the middle of March, and then 6 weeks will take you to the beginning of May. 8 weeks would take you to the middle of May, which would be a good time to have your transplants grow for about 6 to 8 weeks after you plant the seeds. So stratification, plant the seeds in potting mix, grow for 6 to 8 weeks, and then move those transplants outside and harden them off, and they'll be ready to go in your garden. So that's why stratification is something that you can start in January before you're ready to start your annual seeds. Plants that need cold, moist stratification sometimes need multiple cycles. So you have to put them in a cold, moist environment and then put them in a warm spot and then back in the cold and back in the warm to germinate. It just depends on the species. So let's go through an example of how you would do cold, moist stratification because that's one of the more common methods. First of all, you have to pick a substrate that will hold moisture close to your seeds, but not too much moisture. A few options you might consider are paper towels or coffee filters. I tend to use paper towels. You could also use potting mix or sand. One of the advantages of sand over potting mix is it's a little bit harder to get the sand too wet. The sand doesn't hold as much moisture. I think it's a little bit easier to work with paper towels, easier to squeeze more moisture out. If you have too much moisture next to the seeds, they can rot. You will see in some instructions, especially if you're using potting mix or sand, they'll ask you to sterilize those substrates before you use them to stratify your seeds. I tend to use paper towels, and I've never sterilized my paper towels before I did stratification. I do sometimes get some fungal growth on the paper towels, but it seems to work okay anyway. And again, you don't want too much moisture because you don't want those seeds to rot. One of the things I never regret doing when I'm starting seeds is labeling things, and labeling with perhaps more information than I think I will need. I never remember as much about planting my seeds as I think I will. So if you use a permanent marker on your paper towel, you can write down which plant species you're going to put in each paper towel. And then get the paper towels damp. You want them to be wet, and then squeeze as much water out as you can so that they're not dripping. Spread them out on a table or a countertop, and then put a little pile of seeds in the middle of each paper towel. Again, you can see the permanent marker here is holding up just fine on the paper towels. And then wrap the paper towel around the seed so that you have a little packet of seeds and you're holding all the seeds of each species all together in this little packet so they don't get mixed up with each other. And then you can put all of these packets in a closed container, whether it's a Ziploc bag or a plastic container, something that seals, and put it in your refrigerator. A refrigerator temperature is a good temperature for cold, moist stratification. Do not put your seeds in the freezer unless the instructions specifically say the seeds need to experience freezing temperatures. And then just leave them there. Maybe talk to other folks with whom you share the refrigerator to make sure they don't throw out your seeds while they are going through their stratification process, but they'll be fine in the refrigerator as long as people don't disturb them. And then importantly, set yourself a reminder, whether it's on a digital device or writing a note on the calendar for when your seeds need to come out. Again, for each plant species, it will tell you 30 days, 60 days, some other number of days. When it's time to take them out, you just unwrap them from the paper towels, plant them in potting mix, and put them in a warm spot, possibly a bright spot too, depending on the plant species. A few more notes about stratification. So some seeds of some plants will need light in order to germinate. This tends to be more likely to be true of smaller seeds, so pay attention to the instructions that come with your seeds and don't plant them too deeply. Sometimes the instructions will say to just sprinkle the seeds on the surface. If you do that, you'll have to be a little careful about watering, but if you plant the seeds too deep, they won't germinate. As I mentioned earlier, some seeds may need, in addition to stratification, also scarification to break the seed coat. And then some seeds don't need either stratification or scarification. So again, make sure you're reading and following instructions that come with the seeds. And then finally, seed stratification is not an exact science, which can be concerning to some folks and also liberating to other folks. when I have looked for perennial wildflower seeds from companies that sell those seeds, they'll often have notes that say, if you try a different stratification method and it works, we'd love to hear about it. There's a lot of genetic diversity even within a single plant species of these wildflowers, and because of that, they can germinate under really variable conditions. Again, I'll include in the video description some links to more information about how to do the stratification for specific species. And then finally, if you need help recognizing your wildflower seedlings once they've germinated, I wrote a blog post about this. It tends to be less important when you're germinating seeds inside because hopefully you have just one type of seed in a pot. But if you need some help recognizing your seedlings and knowing if what you planted is what's actually growing, you can check out the blog post that I will link in the video description. It has some pictures of seedlings when they're very small and a little bigger, and also some descriptions of things to look for. So with that, thank you for attending. Because we're not showing this live, I can't take any live questions. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is on the screen, arc55@cornell.edu. I also have my Instagram handle, and Biocontrol Bites is my blog where I post about seed stratification and other biocontrol topics. So thanks for joining us today, and thanks, Matt, for having me.
Thanks, Amara. That was an awesome presentation. Makes me super excited thinking about the spring and planting and this whole year-round process. It's not just putting things in the ground in the spring. We can think about planting throughout the year. So thank you for your great presentation. For our IPM Minute today, what we're going to do is share our annual review video that takes clips from different segments of our 2025 What's Bugging You First Friday series. Maybe there's a snippet of knowledge that you want to capture and go back and watch the full video. So please enjoy our 2025 year in review.
So this is where you hold up a white piece of paper near the location that you're interested in. Place your hands about 12 inches between that paper and the light source, and then look at the shadow of your hand on that piece of paper.
All household chemicals are toxic to some degree and pose risks. Some, like the ones that I showed you, might even pose more risk than pesticides you have around the house.
If you smell mothballs, if you're familiar with mothballs, you've probably experienced them being misused. You're not supposed to be smelling the mothballs if they're used correctly.
Keep in mind, all pest management professionals must be licensed. The individuals carry an applicator's license, which certifies that they've been through training and testing, and their knowledge base is, good enough to do pest control.
We can reduce our risk of getting bit by a tick by using multiple strategies. And I really like the Swiss cheese model because it shows that there's no one thing that you can do that's going to protect you all the time. The more that you do, the better protected you're going to be.
Some other things we could do, again, securing the bait. We could use nesting material. This is attractive for reproducing females as they're building their nest. So we can actually slow reproduction significantly.
Evening, they go up and get under that flap, and they can't figure out how to get out of there. So in the morning, we can open that flap up, collect them, and destroy the caterpillars.
So the goal with preparing your soil ahead of a fall planting is you want to remove existing plants and manage weeds in that space where you want to be growing those perennial wildflowers.
It can feed on a lot of different things, but two things that it's feeding can significantly damage and even kill is tree of heaven and grapevines.
It's a real issue because it causes what we call phytophotodermatitis. So when the sap touches your skin, it causes a reaction that makes your skin especially sensitive to the sun. So it basically gives you a very strong sunburn.
you can see my 2 test strips here. All right, I've got sidewalk, and then right next to the sidewalk there's that brown strip where we didn't overseed, but that's the crabgrass that's dead. Then next to that I have my perennial ryegrass that's come in. It looks lush, it looks beautiful. All I've done there is run that spreader up and down, drop that seed on the ground. I haven't watered it, and it's just been Mother Nature taking over.
And it wasn't until about 2017, and then the story was written about it in the Washington Post when they finally figured out that it was caused by this nematode. So a microscopic worm is actually up in the foliage between the upper and lower leaf tissue.
Does adding the BTI mosquito dung prevent adult emergence? Clearly it does. The treated buckets had no adult emergence, and these are 6 or 8 different sites, 6 different scientists, and we all had the same result.
So what we're looking for are plants that have lots of pollen and nectar. We want season-long flowers across all of the plants that you have planted in your yard, or even your neighbor's yard. We'll take that in. And then a variety of flower shapes and sizes.
If you can put a number 2 pencil under a door, a mouse can squeeze under that opening. And this is because the skull height is about 1/4 of an inch or greater.
Hopefully you've been doing some weed management throughout the summer, and now you want to do that final soil prep before you're going to do your fall planting.
So if we can interrupt that life cycle and pick up those leaves, we'll be removing a lot of inoculum for disease spores that will go on to infect the tree again in the spring. So we're cleaning up all the leaves and we're getting that disease potential out of the orchard.
You have probably heard that fall is for planting specifically perennials. And the reason that fall is a good time for planting perennials is if you are transplanting, it can be a less stressful time to get your perennials in the ground.
We are starting to see some negative economic impacts. There are 2 oceanside, beachside campgrounds that are popular, the most popular campgrounds at the federal and state level on the East Coast. And people come from across the country. These 2 campgrounds have been inundated to the point where they've had to close, they've lost revenue. People are taking these cockroaches home in their gear, in their tents, their campers.
The pupae of the case makers are always going to be above the food choice, and the webbing moth is going to pupate in their food source, so in the fabric that they're eating.
And then you want to make sure that you're vacuuming all those cracks, crevices, hard to reach spots, because what happens is when those larvae pupate, they move away from the food source and they end up trying to get it a secure spot in these cracks and crevices.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we look forward to seeing you at a future First Friday event. Take care.